as long as I can stay in curiosity, as long as I can come from a place of asking questions, I can help people unlock, I can help people move forward and answer questions. If I shift into that place of, I know, and I'm going to tell you, then I'm not learning anymore.
When you have conversations, are you asking or telling? How curious are you about those who you interact with?
I want to understand. I want to help. I want to know. So I call it a place of curiosity.
This is Mark Wojcik, and I'm wondering, how's your so-called career? Welcome to So-Called, the podcast that explores the why and how of work. On today's episode, we meet Tammy Adams, Certified Professional Facilitator. Tammy is the owner and founder of Chaosity LLC, a company that brings clarity to the chaos of business and leadership meetings. Can you describe a little bit more about what it is a facilitator does?
The work of facilitation itself is all about designing conversations, running the folks through the process of what you've designed, and then documenting those relevant things that came out of that conversation. So in a nutshell, that's what it is. And the role of the facilitator, we like to say that it's both pilot, architect, and guide.
Okay.
Pilot, architect, and guide. So architect is the one who's designing on the front end. You're designing the conversation. Anytime you have more than one person in the conversation, which we all have those individual conversations, but once you have more than one person in a conversation, you are now having a quote meeting. It may be informal, it may be formal. If you're having a formal kind of meeting, then having that design of what you want intentionally out of it is that architecture. The pilot is, okay, so now I need to think about getting the folks from here to there and all of the things that are required both in setup and environment to get folks from here to there. And then the guide is the role of actually taking them through that process and encountering all the things you encounter along the way to get them there. So that's what a facilitator, the work of the facilitator really.
I love the name of your company, Chaosity. How did you come about that name, or how did you pick it?
Well, I was trying to find words that fit what I wanted to do in the world. Mm-hmm. And as I started thinking about the skills of being a facilitator, which is what I am, I realized that there's a lot of tangled knots out there in the world. Tangled knots of conversation, both in individuals as well as in organizations. And so I found that what I do is I bring clarity, hopefully simplicity, but not always, but definitely clarity to that knot. And so I was trying to find words that played with that. And so, of course, the word chaos, chaos theory, all of that came into play. And then the words clarity and simplicity. So in putting those two together, it was Chaosity.
What kinds of meetings benefit from facilitation? Tammy describes them as high-stakes conversations. What is a high-stakes conversation?
A high-stakes conversation is any kind of a conversation with a group of people that the organization needs in order to move forward. So it's not a status meeting, it's not.
Sure.
It's not the typical run-of-the-mill kinds of weekly updates. I'll give you some examples. Could be strategic planning. That's high stakes. It's moving the company forward. We need to have the senior executives in alignment around that thing. Equally, a company says, I don't understand why we're not profitable in this particular product line. Maybe they're a manufacturing organization. Mm-hmm. And so let's bring folks together. We need to figure out whether we're going to stay in this line of business or we're going to get out of it. So that's a big organizational question. It's high stakes. Are we going to stay in or get out?
Why do people need a facilitator?
Well, so the easiest way to answer that is when you think of being passionate about something, when you think about something that you care deeply about, do you tend to be objective?
No.
So imagine a group of people who have passion around the topic, whatever the topic might be, where the company's going, how well the project is doing, and what should be done. They have an investment in that conversation. They've got some stake in the game. And anytime we have a stake in the game, it's really hard for us to be objective. Patrick Lencioni talks about groups who are able to have those kinds of passionate conversations, and that actually being something we aspire to as an organization, as a team, being able to have those heated, difficult kinds of conversations really is when you know you have a high-performing team, because they're able to battle, and yet it's not about us personally, it's us battling about the topic. Now, what's really helpful in that battle is for someone to be there as an objective guide to objectively help the team, say, all right, so now we're in quicksand.
Yeah.
Just want you to know we're in quicksand right now, and we're going to stay here just for a few seconds. You guys continue to battle it out, and if you don't get out of here quick, I'm going to help you move out of the quicksand.
Yeah.
So that's when you need a facilitator, someone who can be objective and help the group continue to move forward rather than getting mired in the quicksand.
Yes. What do you enjoy, or what do you find satisfying about the work?
I think the thing I find the most satisfying, there's two moments that bring joy to me. One is when I see a group of folks who may not always work well together or may not work together at all, and I see them be able to reach a specific decision or goal by the end of the meeting that they thought was unattainable. The second is when through a process, and this happens a lot when I'm facilitating process improvement kind of work sessions. When a group is trying to improve a process, they often have those aha moments along the way where they go, oh my God, why were we doing that? And oh, no wonder we're having so much trouble. Those aha moments are just spectacular, and they also bring me joy. You're not advising and telling people what to do, you're creating a path, and when they step onto that path and they make realizations, you get joy from that. So yeah.
Another source of joy for Tammy is when the team achieves something great, even when there are unexpected hurdles to overcome.
So as you might guess, the design never works perfectly.
Yes. Yeah, no truer words have ever been spoken probably about any design. Yes.
So you design a brilliant conversation, or at least what you think is a brilliant conversation, and you get into the meeting and you find out that the world has shifted. You asked about a perfect day. A perfect day is when we walk into the meeting room and the group gels and discovers, even if there's been shifts, they discover what those things are. We're able to incorporate them into the day and do something magnificent by the time we're done. We're able to reach the goals or the revised goals that the group has achieved. And at the end of the day, even if there's been some heated conversation, we all walk out well and whole and go back into our jobs knowing that we've accomplished something that needed to be accomplished. That's a good day.
So you talked about things that you take satisfaction from. Are there things that you find harder to do?
Yes.
Yeah. No, nobody said no to that question yet, by
Really?
the way. Yeah.
Well, there's always the aspects of the work that are not quite as fun. One of those for me is on the front end when I'm having initial conversations in that design phase. Unless folks have worked with a facilitator before, there's sometimes lots of confusion that can happen there around what is my role and what am I expecting from them. So there has to be some really clear conversations on the front end. And that churn part is not one of my favorite parts. I enjoy more once we're able to get past that and actually into what we're designing. But those conversations are critical because if you aren't clear in working with the sponsor, the person who's bringing you into the conversation to run the conversation, then there's going to be a lot of miscommunication that happens in the meeting. So while it's not my favorite part, it's critical.
If you've been through that once and had a successful outcome and you come back again it's easier the next time through. It's okay, yeah. Could you do that thing that that magic that you do when we all agree on something? Having subject matter expertise is not necessarily a difficulty for a facilitator, but it is something that needs to be factored into the meeting design.
You don't have to be an expert in content in order to facilitate a group through a process. Now, if you are an expert, sometimes you can ask insightful questions from that perspective that are really beneficial to the group. So I'm not saying that it's bad to be an expert. I am saying that it is harder to stay out of the content
yes.
and lead the group through it without continuing to try to steer them in your direction.
How did you get into this work? What's your background?
This morning I walked by the building and you had to come out and grab me.
Yeah.
And pull me back in and say, hey, Tammy, the room is in here. Well, that's kind of how my career has gone. I call it an opportunistic career. No person when they're young wakes up and says, Mom, Dad, I want to be a facilitator when I grow up.
Yeah, yeah, that would be a rarity probably, right?
So
yeah.
It's kind of a happenstance thing. And I found, like many people, I found that I was collaborative by nature. And I also found that I seemed to be able to have conversation with groups. I worked with project teams a lot in my careers and found that kind of collaborative work environment was something I enjoyed, but really didn't know what I was doing. So unconsciously competent. At the time I was working for Bank of America. The bank was looking for ways to work differently. And so they created a group of what they called JAD facilitators, Joint Application Development Facilitators. And the idea at that time, and I would not prescribe this now, but the idea at that time was you get the business and you get technology in the room and you lock the doors.
Okay.
And you keep them in the room with a facilitator until you figure out how you're going to use technology to solve that business problem, and you're able to design and get requirements around it. So that was the concept.
Sort of a hostage situation. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and it worked better than anything at the time. So that was my initiation. Is I realized when they created this JAD facilitator concept. And so I raised my hand and said, I'd like to learn about that. So I got trained as a JAD facilitator, and that started to shift away from just JAD to other kinds of improvement conversations or other kinds of project conversations. So it was really interesting. So it started to evolve. And I did that for several years. And that was at the time of bank mergers, and I had been through several.
Mm-hmm.
And I just decided that it was time to do something different. What I found in that discovery was that this skill of facilitation is transferable, that I could take it outside of this world that I had been living in, and it would go with me from company to company because the skill was mine.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to another company, worked in a software company for a few years, and found that skill served me well in bringing folks together to have conversations around how do we do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And then I went out on my own.
Okay. Yeah. So that sort of became your superpower, or you discovered that along the way.
So conscious competence is an interesting thing. So that didn't happen immediately. That came through training.
Mm-hmm.
It came through finding out that there is actually an association out there for facilitators that, oh my gosh, there are other people like me that do this work.
How different or similar is your background from other facilitators?
So my educational background is in business. That's not necessarily the educational background of a facilitator, of any facilitator. Everyone seems to be different. One of the ladies that I work with a lot, we partner on jobs. Her background is in mathematics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very different.
Yeah.
Whoever you are, whatever background you bring to the table really doesn't matter as long as you have that collaborative bone that says, I value and trust the wisdom of the group, and my job is to create the process that leads them through.
Mm-hmm.
So I can come from any background, and that background might flavor who I am and how I interact. But again, if I hold that loosely and guide the process, it just becomes an asset.
Does your background give you any advantages?
I guess I would say being a lifelong learner, believing in continuous growth and education is a real asset in facilitation.
I think there's a real creative aspect of that too.
It is.
I see this here and I can apply this over here.
Yeah. And I mentioned the association. Once a year, the International Association of Facilitators has a conference. And what I found fascinating about that conference is every time I go, I end up with like sheets of notes about things that folks have done differently and tried differently that now I want to go apply and use. And sometimes the learnings are from those experiences you wish you never had.
Yeah. They're not always positive.
They're not always those. Okay.
But it's still learning.
Yeah. They're not always that, I just saw this wonderful technique and learned about it. Now I'm going to try it. Sometimes it's that didn't work.
Yeah. I'm not doing that again.
No.
Yes. Who influenced your thoughts and attitudes about work?
Well, of course, family.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about that on the way here. My family influenced, so I found myself in the middle of conversations in my family.
Mm-hmm.
And so early on, I noticed that I was the go-between.
Okay.
So that was something that started to be honed in me early on in my life.
Sure.
I also, Joseph Campbell has been a philosopher that I've really enjoyed.
Okay.
And his conversations around following your bliss, rather than following your passion.
Yeah.
Following your bliss, those things that we talked about earlier that make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't always know what those are. Discovering and being open to discovery to find what your bliss is. I think those have been influencers. And then, of course, just watching others as I've developed. I've had some wonderful point in time mentors along the way that have said, "Hey, what you doing?"
Yeah. Oh, I like that phrase, the point in time mentors, because, that's mentoring can take all shapes and forms, right? And
yeah. The lady that I've worked with over the years has been wonderful, a wonderful mentor for me. And not through formal mentoring, but point in time, me watching what she's doing, wondering and being curious about what that is, asking questions, because she had a business long before I did. And, so how did she do that? And what did she find that worked? And so all of those questions were helpful. And she has been a mentor as well.
The next big thing for Tammy is extending her facilitation skills and training through Vistage, a peer-to-peer executive advisory forum where she chairs a leadership group. Looking ahead, is there a next big thing you want to do or that you're working on, whether career or otherwise?
Yes. I am in process right now of doing something new.
Okay.
Because it's all about trying new things, right? So now I am moving into being what they call a chair of my own leadership group here in Boise.
Okay.
And in that venue, being able to apply the facilitation skills that I've learned over the years with a group of people so that they can discover their own leadership abilities and skills and grow and process through issues that they're facing. So now, in essence, I'm taking what I used to take out to other organizations, and I'm applying it here to groups in Boise.
So looking back on your career now, so that's looking ahead, looking back on your career, what advice would you give to your younger self?
For my younger self, I would have said, learn more about running a business.
Learn
more about running a business. Jump in and figure out all of that startup conversation around bookkeeping and marketing and all of that, and do it well, do it on the front end, learn about those things. That was kind of a later process for me, and was painful.
Yes. And I think you're probably not the only person who has had that pain. Yes.
So learn it early and jump in to that early would have been great. I would say get in network with other facilitators of all different kinds as soon as possible, so that you can see all the variations and flavors of facilitation. I was fortunate in having a woman who came alongside me early. If you don't have that, find someone that, at least at the early point in life, can be that mentor to you in this world of facilitation, whether you're doing it for the job you're in or outside, because having that kind of ability to have those conversations around what could I have done differently, better, would be helpful.
Honing your facilitation skills can be a great benefit, even if you don't plan to be a professional facilitator.
A person who is a facilitator has to come from a place of, I want to understand, I want to help, I want to know. So I call it a place of curiosity, rather than a place of, I know. So for me, that place of curiosity really is all about that continuous learning. As long as I can stay in curiosity, as long as I can come from a place of asking questions, I can help people unlock. I can help people move forward and answer questions. If I shift into that place of, I know, and I'm going to tell you, then I'm not learning anymore. The journey of a facilitator is finding that there's not just one way of doing things, and that you can be helpful in all sorts of different conversations. And you might find that this thing of facilitation, while I've done it for a career, you might want to investigate it not as a career in and of itself, but as a skill set that you use in the career that you're in. Coming from a place of curiosity, learning how to use those facilitation skills to enhance their team, build their company. It's a fabulous skill set.
Tammy's facilitation skills and lifelong learning mindset have served her well, helping her identify and transition into new and evolving career pathways.
I am continually surprised by the wonderful journey that I've been on. It has changed over time. I think when I started, I thought I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I never saw myself as having my own business. And when I started, it felt more like I'm just out there doing jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing little gigs.
Yeah.
And then I would find something new, discover something new. Well, that's interesting. So for me, it has been a growth from just thinking that I'm going out there to do contract work to creating an actual business. And then coming to the place that I realized that what I do is of interest to other people who might want to do the same thing as me,
mm-hmm.
which moved me into the training aspect of things. So there's been transitions over the years, and it's a continuing journey and evolution that I have thoroughly enjoyed. So I don't think I'd want to be on any other journey.
As a lifelong learner, Tammy's curiosity and pursuit of clarity and simplicity have provided her with satisfying personal and professional growth. How's your career journey? Are you still evolving? Are you still learning? Staying professionally curious is the first step to keep growing, whether your interests are facilitation, leadership, or something else. Whether your career is your passion, a paycheck, or a pain, I hope today's episode has informed, inspired, and challenged your own relationship with work. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for more episodes of So Called. If you enjoyed today's episode, please let us know. Subscribe and leave us a review. So Called is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and wherever you get your podcasts.